Clip of the day.
When you buy a gun on the internet, unless you're buying on Craigslist from some guy and you're meeting him on a corner, which, there may be there's a problem with, people giving stuff to each other. They don't ship the gun to your home. You get it from a federally licensed firearms dealer, and they cannot hand that firearm to you until you've done a background check. But the insinuation is, on the internet, there's no background checks. At gun shows, there's no background checks. Untrue. If you buy a gun at a gun show, you probably will have to pick it up unless there's a federally licensed firearms dealer right there. You still cannot just hand over the cash and take it with you. Now, can you meet a guy outside in the corner and grab make a deal? Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. But background checks, they're done. They're in every single state. But the insinuation that somehow online it doesn't work that way, no. And it appears that a lot of legislators don't even know this.
Well, most of this is based on a number of lies. Point out the fact that since Obama got in office, we've put probably another 100 million guns, or at least 50 million more on the street. Mm-hmm. And gun violence has reduced since Obama got in, from the day he got in. It's reduced from 7 per 100,000 gun deaths to 3.8 per 100,000. It's gone down drastically. Mm-hmm. This is never discussed. Right. And in fact, a survey that was done of the public in general, 56% of the public believes the gun violence has gone up based on this hyperbole done by the president and others. So most people think it's gone up. In fact, it's gone way down. And this whole thing is all based on lies. And so the internet lie that I'm going to order a gun and it's going to show up in my mailbox, a UPS gun. I have a nice Glock, just showing up, is all part. This whole thing is a giant lie. And I have a theory about that, too. But I want to hear the rest of what you have to say.
Okay. So it mainly focused on the loopholes, the background checks, the idea that we're going to make things better and sell less guns by moving background check systems to a 17-hour per day availability to a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week availability, to me means you're making gun sales possible by another 8 hours. I don't understand. It seems like, okay, thanks. Now we can always do a background check. It's just going to be easier for everybody. That's an
interesting catch.
Well, I mean, that's the main part of the legislation.
More gun sales.
All the gun guys. I talked to Chris. Chris is on his way to the town hall. Chris Jacob, one of our huge supporters, Sir Chris, and he's going to be at the town hall with Jake Tapper. And you'll see that these things will have to be straightened out. But he's like, this is kind of good. Enhance. He owns gun stores. Have the background checks 24/7. Great. Now we can always do a background check. I don't know. I just don't. That seems to me like that's just an improvement. Just before the president did his speech, he had a little sit down because he had a little sit down with the country and western singer Loretta Lynch there, and I think he misspoke here maybe just a little bit, but this is his true feeling about the mental health part of the executive action.
What I asked my team to do is to see what more we could do to strengthen our enforcement and prevent guns from falling into the wrong hands, to make sure that criminals, people who are mentally unstable, those who could pose a danger to themselves or others are less likely to get a gun.
So people who are mentally unstable, the president says, should not have access to guns. Of course, the issue is who determines who's mentally unstable. And this is what I focused on. Maybe before we get to that, I'd like to do one little clip here that the president and this whole sequence was unbelievable to me. This brings in the Constitution. The president, of course, a constitutional lawyer. Or, I'm sorry, scholar is the new term. He's a constitutional scholar. Well, shit, I'm a constitutional scholar, am I not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not even saying he's a constitutional lawyer. But listen to this.
Now, I want to be absolutely clear at the start. I've said this over and over again. this also becomes routine. There's a ritual about this whole thing that I have to do. I believe in the Second Amendment. It's there written on the paper.
On the paper.
I believe in the Second Amendment. It's written there on the thing, on the paper. What do you call it? The paper. The paper. And then listen to the continuation right after he says, that thing there on the paper. On the paper.
The paper?
Yeah, the paper. It's on the paper.
It guarantees a right to bear arms.
No, it does not, Mr. President. It guarantees that your natural right to bear arms shall not be infringed by laws. That is what it guarantees. Shall not be infringed by laws. Is this guy really a constitutional lawyer?
He has never...
It gets worse. It gets worse.
It guarantees a right to bear arms. No matter how many times people try to twist my words around, I talk constitutional law. I know a little bit about this.
I know a little bit about this. It's on the paper. I know what's on the paper. I know a little bit about what's on the paper.
He gets a big laugh.
I get it.
I get it. You know.
But I also believe that we can find ways to reduce gun violence consistent with the Second Amendment.
But not by creating laws that infringe upon the people's right to bear arms. Now, do we have all kinds of rules and regulations for all other kinds of amendments? Sure. But that is not how a constitutional lawyer, maybe how a constitutional scholar would speak. Right? It's on the paper.
I believe in the Second Amendment. It's there written on the paper.
That should go down in history, man. The paper. It was written on the paper.
That too. At that event, that was galling. But the other thing was interesting. He got a number of standing ovations.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was the most telling because it had everybody jumped up, except that there was 3 black guys right in the front row who were clapping, but they refused to stand up. But they went on too long. So they decided to stand up. They stood up, one of them, then the next one stood up next to him. And then who was the last person, the absolute last person in this entire crowd to stand up during I think pretty much every one of these standing ovations?
The last person.
The last person to stand.
Was it a congressperson, a politician?
Comey.
No, he's... Well, first of all, he's 8 feet tall. He's like, oh, God, I got to get up again. Well, it takes so much time.
He was the last, and not only that, he stood up last and he clapped slowly. And it was
he did a slow clap, yeah.
He's a slow clapper. And as an aside, by the way, I want to tell people out there, if you're giving speeches or talks or you're doing anything and you have a lavalier mic on, please do not clap. Or if you clap low.
Clap to the left.
Right by the mic,
yeah.
And it sounds like gunshots.
Yeah, the sound booth is not happy, people.
Anyway, I got to.
So he was up there on stage, and he had a lot of the Sandy Hook parents. Also, there was Chris Hurst. Chris Hurst. This is the alleged boyfriend of Allison Parker, the journalist who was allegedly killed on camera in Virginia.
Right,
Virginia.
I didn't notice that he was there, but that's interesting.
Was it? I think maybe CNN. Someone caught up with him outside.
Okay,
and to ask him, just how he's doing, all that. And I've always had this issue with this guy where it almost seems like, if you go back and listen to previous shows where this guy's very, very strange, his boyfriend-like reactions. But then he said something about being at this event and maybe about the event in general that. I don't know. Words matter to me. I hate it when people talk about, actors killed people in the scene, all of this stuff. Just too many Hollywood references.
They reported and investigated. And once you answer that question, then that kind of guides you as to whether or not you really think that something should be done by our government.
How are you doing?
I mean, I woke up this morning and I was staring at the hotel ceiling, wishing that I could return this contract that I signed, that she was going to be here with me, that we were going to have our life together, and that this wasn't going to be the most traumatic 5 months of my entire life. But I feel a duty to honor her with action. And right now, I'm a storyteller, and the only thing I can do is share the love that we had together.
I don't like it. I don't like talking about contracts that he signed, and he wish he could have not signed the contract.
But he also said something kind of cold-blooded.
That he's a storyteller?
No, just before that. Play it again. Play it again.
Let me see if I can get off that first bit, was just to get you in the mood for him. Okay, here we go.
You're doing.
I mean, I woke up this morning and was staring at the hotel ceiling, wishing that I could return this contract that I signed.
All right, is that the part or after?
No, the next thing.
Okay.
That she was going to be here with me, that we were going to have our life together, and that this wasn't going to be the most traumatic 5 months of my entire life.
Isn't that strange?
She was going to be here with me. It wasn't going to. The contract. What is he talking about?
Well, he says he signed a contract. If it's a metaphor for your fate in life, then you say, "Hey, I got a bum deal."
Why is she going to be there with him at this event?
And why a contract?
That we were going to have our life together, and that this wasn't going to be the most traumatic 5 months of my entire life.
Maybe he I don't know. It's just, I find that to be a very poor metaphor to use about your dead girlfriend, that you had a contract and you signed it.
Also, it sounded cold-blooded the way he was describing it.
Well, he's saying like he made a deal with the devil. He said, "I wish I hadn't signed this contract and she would have been here with me."
At the hotel ceiling, wishing that I could return this contract that I signed.
Whoa. Sorry. I don't like it.
Well.
I know you don't care, but I don't like it. All right. So to me, the most dangerous part of what the president did is not that anything really changed. I mean, all of these executive actions were just saying, "Hey, we got to enforce what we already have on the books," which is the expansion of the national instant criminal background check system. And now here is what has changed in the HIPAA laws, because that's really what this is about. The HIPAA laws protect the privacy of every individual in the United States who has a medical health record, but any health record, really. So they cannot be used to put you on, a list. And here is the change made to Part 164 of U.S. Code 1302A, and there's a couple others. And is now marked as 164.512. Uses and disclosures for which an authorization or opportunity to agree or object is not required. And this is for disclosing information to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. A covered entity, and we'll get to that, may use or disclose protected health information for purposes of reporting to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System the identity of an individual who is prohibited from possessing a firearm under 18 United States Code 922G4, which I have for you, provided the covered entity is a state agency or other entity that is or contains an entity that is an entity designated by the state to report or which collects information for purposes of reporting on behalf of the state to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or, so I think this is more important, any entity designated by the state to report or which collects information for purposes of reporting on behalf of the state to the background check system. Or it could be a court, a board, a commission, or other lawful authority that makes the commitment or adjudication that causes an individual to become subject to 18 U.S.C. 922. And also, these entities discloses the information only to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System or an entity designated by the state to report on which it collects information. So it can go two ways. So it can be reported back to these entities who have been designated by the state, whatever that is. That could be anybody, I guess. And it discloses only the limited demographic and certain other information needed for purposes of reporting to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Now, this is the only thing that's really changed here is you're now allowed, and I believe we will see that you are required to report a person who is, and here's the legal term, adjudicated as mental defective. And this is that 18 U.S.C. 922 G4. Persons adjudicated as a mental defective or committed to a mental institution. A person is adjudicated as a mental defective if a court, board, commission, or other lawful authority has made a determination that a person, as a result of marked subnormal intelligence, mental illness, incompetency, condition, or disease, is a danger to himself or others, lacks the mental capacity to contract or manage his own affairs, or is found insane by a court in a criminal case, or is found incompetent to stand trial. So when you take incompetency, condition, disease, now disease, autism, it's a disease. It's in the DSM-5. If you are on the spectrum, and I think pretty much every kid today is on the spectrum, that should be reported into any of these entities. It can be reported, and you will be put on a list. That is what is going on. Now, how does that propagate? The first example came to us from our friend Thom Hartman.
Craig Bannister, who's been on this program a number of times. It's been a while since Craig was on. He asked the question, are climate skeptics too mentally ill to buy guns under Obama's new rules? And I'm inclined to say yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is where we're going, people. Stand back. You want to hear his reasoning for him to say yes?
Oh, yeah.
He points out that the current law prohibits individuals from buying a gun if, because of mental health issues, they are either a danger to themselves or others. Then he goes on this logic chain and says, okay, if President Obama has repeatedly claimed climate change is a greater threat than terrorism, then aren't people who deny that climate threat is a danger, deny the climate threat, aren't those people a danger to themselves and others and thus unfit to own guns? Mm-hmm. And Craig Bannister then goes on to point out that he's not the first guy to think of this. Psychology Today published an article back in 2014, titled, You Are in Climate Change Denial, 3 Signs to Look For. Number 1, you think climate change is bad but not that bad. 2, you don't have an emotional reaction to climate change. 3, you aren't getting political. Thus, Craig Bannister writes, if you think the climate threat is great enough and you're not furious about it or you're not politically active in the climate fight, you've got mental issues. Yeah. According to the Telegraph newspaper, climate denial is now a mental disorder. He explains how so-called eco-psychologists convened at the University of the West of England in Bristol to explore identifying or classifying climate change denial as a mental disorder. And then he quotes Gina McCarthy, the EPA chief under Obama earlier on, as saying climate skeptics are not normal people. So, Craig, maybe.
Woo, maybe. Yeah, maybe this is what's going to happen.
That is the sickest thing. I'm going to actually give you borderline clip of the day for that, playing that a-hole.
Oh, that's very kind of you. I didn't even expect that, but I will take a borderline.
Clip of the day.
Got a note from the head mofo in charge.
Unbelievable.
Sir HMFIC, Black Knight of the U.S. Army, and he had a few thoughts. Now, these are guys, the head mofo, and, this is our drill sergeant. These guys know what's going on with veterans and with the current enlisted personnel. When looking at the new executive actions, the big one that sticks out to me is the mental health reporting part. My main concern with mental health reporting provisions is twofold. First, you now can have a constitutional right stripped without due process, as a judge does not have to view the medical evidence and make a determination to adjudicate you mentally defective. Fantastic point.
Yes.
And that is for your constitutionally protected natural right. Let's put it that way. If you piss off your VA shrink, they can report you as being unfit, and the government will take their word for it without any evidence required. What happens if every vet with a PTSD diagnosis that has sought or is receiving treatment is reported as unfit by the VA, and now they lose their rights? Second, how many vets and those who need help are now not going to seek it out of fear of being stripped of the constitutional rights they've fought to uphold and defend? What effect will this have on warfighter suicide, as they are now afraid to get help from the resources that exist for them? Yeah.
Dynamite.
And that's probably one of the main targets. Because, vets are all, they're all crazy white guys. And they all just want to go kill people.
Actually, most of them probably aren't white.
No, but just, for the point of the ill-informed who create laws.
This is a disaster.
It is a huge disaster. This mandatory reporting,